November 2020, day 28. And tonight I'm going to read from Out of the Doghouse. This is a book by Robert Weiss. Rob Weiss is one of the authorities in the sex addiction and sexual healing treatment world. He runs Seeking Integrity, which is a treatment center and a very online community. Rob really championed that online engagement. I remember doing some training with Rob, and he said, look, don't, any of you therapists out there, don't get long-term leases because things are going to move online, and this is pre-COVID, and he was a prophet in regards to that. Rob's got a lot of great books. He has the seminal book on gay men and sex addiction called Cruise Control. He has a Sex Addiction 101 textbook and a fantastic, really user-friendly Sex Addiction 101 workbook. I just sold today. He's got a book called Always Turned On in regard for porn addiction, and he wrote a very famous book called Pro-Dependence, which really looked deeply at the issue of how families get pathologized when they turn up to treatment with their loved ones, and their behavior of being really hyper vigilant and caring and going into the bat for their loved one gets pushed through a lens of dysfunction when there's actually a very functioning way of caring for people that you love. And that book is his most recent. But tonight I would just want to, paying tribute, there's so many things you could read of Rob's, but one of the questions that come up when I work with sex addicts that are in relationships is, should I stay or should I go? And it's a very difficult question, and I don't want to, I know Rob has a very sophisticated view on it, but this book wasn't written for sex addicts. This book was written for people that have suffered from infidelity, and they haven't worked out yet whether they're a sex addict or not, but it's a step-by-step relationship saving guide. So it's sort of pitched at that full admission that I've got a serious addiction problem and I need to do something about it. And so I know Rob means no disrespect to any partners, because we know now that, betrayal trauma is a serious relational harm caused upon partners of sex addicts. And so this isn't to dismiss that, but this is for the man who is trying to work out, should I stay or should I go? 14 questions to ask yourself. Unfortunately, there is no cut and dried formula for deciding if your committed relationship has enough positive aspects to make the difficult work of healing worthwhile. Nevertheless, by honestly answering the questions below, you will likely gain some degree of clarity, especially if your answers are supplemented with honest, empathic, and impartial feedback from a therapist, a trusted friend, a spiritual advisor, and/or a supportive family member. So 1. Do you enjoy spending time with her? If you have come to genuinely dislike or no longer appreciate your spouse as a person, that's an obvious red flag. After all, one of the primary reasons for being in a long-term romantic partnership is that it's fun and enjoyable. If you find that you dread spending time with your significant other, and if being with her feels like a chore, then you may lack the solid foundation that is necessary for rebuilding a relationship. 2, do you trust her? Trust is a key element in a healthy relationship. If two people trust each other, if they know they have each other's backs no matter what, that's a solid relationship foundation. Of course, you've almost certainly decimated your partner's trust in you by cheating on her, and it will take a long time and a lot of concerted effort to earn back that trust. So the question here really is whether you still trust her to be there for you. If you do, that's worth a lot. How many people in this world would trust you? Would you trust with your home, your finances, your kids, your feelings, and everything else that's important in your life? 3, do you play well together? If you or your mate have at least a few common interests, hobbies, and activities that you can enjoy together, that's a strong indicator of a relationship worth saving, especially if those interests are in an important area of your life for one or both of you. This means that if you or your mate find each other's activities, recreational pursuits, and anecdotes fun and entertaining, or at least not too boring, then the two of you probably enjoy being together. However, if one of you feels trapped and dragged along on an uninteresting ride, this bodes poorly for your long-term relationship health. This does not mean that you have to love all of her interests, nor she yours. If her passion for knitting puts you to sleep, so be it, as long as the two of you have a few interests that you both enjoy. 4, Do you share core values and beliefs? You and your mate are not going to agree on every little thing, nor should you, but to make the relationship work over the long haul, you need at least a little common ground regarding things like religion, politics, finances, education, and raising kids. If you have this in your relationship, then you have a solid foundation upon which you can rebuild. Conversely, your relationship's potential is significantly diminished if one of you feels forced into a certain belief system or way of living, accepting it only to make the other person happy or to avoid rejection and abandonment. Do you have kids? Children are not the only reason to stay in a relationship, but they're a darn good one. After all, no matter how much you struggle with your spouse, you're going to love your children and you will always keep their welfare in mind. So you need to consider the ways in which they will be affected if you or your spouse separate. You should also keep in mind the fact that your ex will probably get at least half-time custody if you split up, so you won't see them nearly as often, which is distressing for everybody. If the kids are hers from a previous relationship, you might not see them at all. In short, breaking up a family is a significantly more profound decision than splitting up a couple, because lives and futures of several people, some of whom may be too young to fend for themselves, are at stake. 6. Do you or your spouse usually find a way to resolve disagreements? In any intimate relationship, conflict is inevitable. It is also useful because it helps us to define our boundaries. In healthy relationships, arguments and disagreements are actually growth opportunities, chances to learn patience, empathy, and new ways of thinking and relating. However, when a relationship is not so healthy, even the smallest issue can become a smouldering resentment, usually tied to another, much deeper and more enduring concern. So, even when you and your spouse are unable to agree, if you can at least amicably disagree most of the time, then you probably have something worth saving. 7. Are you free to be your own man? As stated above, good relationships are built on commonality, but too much closeness and agreement can feel smothering and enmeshed to both of you. If you feel uncomfortable with or discouraged from having your own interests, friends, and activities, not including your cheating, then you may be in an excessively entangled fear-based relationship, and that's far from ideal. The best relationships involve separate people with separate identities, with each person free to think and act as he or she sees fit, within certain mutually agreed upon limits. 8. Do you respect each other? If you or your partner each bring something special and meaningful to the relationship, then it is much easier to respect each other's opinions, interests, beliefs, and contributions. If, however, the relationship is drastically unequal, with one person running the show at all times, you will probably continue to struggle. In a healthy relationship, each person values and respects the other exactly as he or she truly is. This is not to say that there can't be an imbalance of power in certain areas. For instance, you might be the primary breadwinner while your partner takes charge of the house and the kids. There is nothing wrong with this arrangement, as long as neither of you feels used, put upon, exploited, or unappreciated, and the lines of communication are open regarding growth and change. 9. Do you still enjoy sex with her? You're probably well past the puppy love stage when you first started dating and having sex, no longer feeling the same type of electric shock with your wife that you get when you spot a hot new woman. So the question here is not about crazy, wild, instant, hard hotness every time you look at your spouse. It's about whether you feel a continuing spark of sexual attraction to her, and if you enjoy the physical intimacy that you still have with her, or that you were having until she found out about your cheating. 10. Does she support you emotionally? If you think that your mate is not there for you when the going gets tough, or that she expresses constant disagreement, dismissal, negativity, criticism, control, or indifference towards your thoughts, beliefs, goals, desires, or activities, aside from your sexual infidelity, that's not a great indicator of long-term relationship well-being. If, however, she works to help you succeed and leaves you feeling as if you constantly have someone in your corner cheering for you, then your relationship is much more likely to survive. 11. Does your relationship roll with the punches? It is important for both of you and your significant other to understand that a relationship is not stagnant. If growth occurs or is sought and both parties accept and even cheer that, then there is a great foundation on which to rebuild. Conversely, the more resistance to change there is, the tougher it will be to heal your relationship, because a major part of the healing process involves making changes. 12. Are your relationship expectations realistic? No person or relationship is perfect. If either of you or your spouse consistently expects the other person to look and act a certain way, then disappointment is inevitable. In a healthy relationship, both partners must accept and respect each other and their wants and all. No person can consistently live up to another person's fantasy of imperfection, and expecting someone to do so is a recipe for disappointment, resentment, pain, and failure. Have you done this before? Do you have a history of ending relationships because of your cheating? If so, no matter how you feel about your significant other, it's probably time to take a long, hard look at your thoughts and behaviours regarding long-term commitment. If the common denominator in your failed relationships is you, the happiness that you seek will never be found by simply moving onto someone new. So you might want to stick with your current relationship while you make changes within yourself. If you do, you may find that you end up with something truly special. And 14. Are you both invested in saving the relationship? It takes two to tango, and if you want to keep your relationship alive, but your mate seems determined to end it, there is little you can do about it. If your desire to save your relationship is one-sided, then there really is no relationship to save. In such cases, the best you can do is to accept this fact, grieve, and learn from your mistakes. Many women say they are done in the heat of the moment, but don't really mean it. If you think this might be the case with your spouse, then don't give up. But if she really does seem finished, you may need to just back away and move on. So once again, there are no set rules for determining when a relationship is or is not worth saving, nor is this book written to convince you either to stay or to move on. Ultimately, you must decide this matter for yourself. If, however, you find that you've answered yes to more than a few of these above questions, then you've probably got something that's worth the effort. I'd also like to reiterate that it is wise to share your responses to these questions above with other people, a therapist, a spiritual advisor, trusted friends, and supportive family members. There are people who know you and your relationship well, and as impartial observers, they can see and point out the things that you may be missing or ignoring. In all likelihood, you will find their input invaluable, even if you don't always like what they have to say in the moment. So that's a bit from Out of the Doghouse by Rob Weiss. Rob's got podcast, Sex Addiction 101. His Seeking Integrity website has all sorts of resources for addicts, partners, 12-step meetings, support for therapists. He truly is, one of the world's big thinkers on this subject. So please check out Rob, check out his books on Amazon. And November 28, it's pretty well, I've got a couple more days to go. If this message that you're hearing would be good for someone you know, or someone that's been in a cheating situation and would benefit from the book Out of the Doghouse, then please refer them to this tape. And I look forward to making another video tomorrow.